The center of it all for her is anxiety. Brooke used to use different words all the time. She goes, I'm scared, I'm worried. Even when she was younger, it's important to me that you use the right words. I want you to understand what that word means because we need to be talking the same language. And she'd say, I'm worried I'm gonna throw up. And I was like, don't worry, you're gonna throw up. You're not gonna throw up. Don't worry about that. And finally, one day she looked at me and she said, can you stop saying not to worry? And I said, well, what do you want me to say? She goes, I don't know, but it doesn't help me because I can't stop it. I said, I'll come up with something else. The next day, like we were in the car, she was like, I'm afraid to go to school today. I go, you can be afraid. You're still gonna go. It just became a very important part of our conversation. Her knowing how she wanted to be spoken to and me listening and saying, I'm not gonna negate what you're saying. My name is Dena Blizzard. I am a comedian and mother of 3. My youngest has some attention issues, some learning issues, and a beautiful mind that I am always trying to understand. I think I noticed things were different at different times. Brooke was always very independent. I started to notice the learning issues probably around 2nd grade. They were very minor. Her backpack was messy. You know, her teacher said, oh, it's a little disheveled. It wasn't until 3rd grade that it really became obvious in terms of the attention and learning issues.
I always felt like I was in like some sort of test, like my life was a test in school. I thought that everyone else was like perfect, but then I was a ghost kind of.
I think for a lot of these things, the signs were always there, but it took a while for me to kind of put all the pieces together. At the early parts, I was hiding it. I was saying, hey, we're just gonna talk to this doctor. Or, hey, we're just gonna go for this test. It was all very light. She was very young. She was 8 or 9 years old. And she knew something was wrong. She'd come home and she'd say, I studied. I don't understand. I knew them. I said them to you last night. Why did I fail this test the next day? Like, she knew something was wrong.
When I used to be really nervous at school, I made cards that could flip, and it says like, I need to call my mom, or I need to use the bathroom, because I used to not be able to talk, or like I didn't want to talk when I was nervous.
I knew she was anxious, but I thought it was because we were doing a ton of tests and we didn't know what was wrong. I just thought it was a normal anxiety reaction to the unknown. But the more we learned, we figured out that, you know, she had a very major anxiety disorder.
I still know the feeling. It goes up into your stomach and then it's cold at the top of your face and you feel very like loose to the ground. You don't really care what anyone thinks. I just kind of need to get away from life for a second.
Anxiety played a big role in how she learned, but it didn't negate the fact that there still existed a learning disability. It was April. Brooke was in 8th grade. I had asked the child study team to get together with the teachers and our case manager to talk about if there was a way that we could give her oral tests, because her ability to get her thoughts on paper in an accurate amount of time is just not there. My goal was to try to see what accommodations we can come up with, so if we could start to figure this out, to be able to tell the team in the high school what we know is effective for her. The case manager put her hands on the table and said, we're not making any changes to the IEP. If they want to make these changes, they can make them at the high school. And it wasn't until that moment that I just felt like I was by myself. And I remember running out of the building, just hoping that nobody would see me. And I got to my car, and I couldn't even drive. I couldn't stop crying. And then I pulled in the CVS parking lot, and I just thought, I can't be the only person that cries in my car. After an IEP meeting, I'm just gonna go live.
I'm trying to do my best to prepare her.
While I had so much support from providers, I don't know that I had a great network of other parents. And not because I don't think that they would have been willing to share, it's just that nobody ever talks about it.
For any mom out there, just know that you are not alone. It feels very alone when you're sitting in the parking lot, but just know that you should talk about it.
If I was at the park, or I would meet a mom who was struggling, or you could tell there were things going on, I would go over, I'm like, you know what? My daughter's the same thing. And we'd start a conversation. And every time my daughter would come over and she'd pull on my sweater and she'd just kind of, and I was like, what's up? She's like, why are you telling everybody? And I I was like, because there's nothing wrong with you. I have a company called One Funny Mother, and we basically make videos and products all about wine, women, and laughter. I probably might have gotten to my solutions faster if I had met somebody who had a kid with anxiety and learning issues and ADD, and how best did she deal with that. And I think that as a comedian, it was a very valuable lesson for me to learn. You know, when my kids were really young is when I started doing stand-up. And I think that there's something about comedy, about being vulnerable and connecting with people and saying, this is who I am, and all of my craziness and all of my ways that just fall apart. Hey everybody, it's Dena Blizzard, live from the kitchen. You start to see that the story that you think is so unique to you is really not that unique, and that there are so many people that are having these same struggles. And so I just feel like I'd rather create a community than just always feel by myself. I think that the greatest gift you can give your kids is self-awareness and an understanding that, you know, these things happen and they're not bad things, but you have to address them and you have to deal with them. And if you do, you'll be so much better off than if you ignore them for 20 years. I guess because of the way we talk about it, and because I've always really made sure that she uses the right words and she advocates for herself, when she does see a kid at school that's struggling, or she sees a kid who's crying or seems anxious, she'll go right up and say, listen, I have the same thing. I totally know what you're going through. Like, she's using all the right words and hopefully, you know, helping other kids. And I think that because she does speak about it so eloquently, I think she makes it okay to have it. I think that's, if you have a child that has multiple issues, not only figuring out what they all are, but which one's at the center, which one controls everything else. If you can figure that out, you know, you might have a fighting chance.